I was thinking about this, and there are, like, very few words in our language that carry as much heavy, just deeply judgmental baggage as the word lazy.
Oh, absolutely. It is so loaded.
Right. Like, think about it. When we can't seem to just get off the couch to do a task, we rarely step back and say, oh, I'm struggling with a specific mechanical barrier right now.
Yeah, we don't give ourselves that kind of grace.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We look in the mirror and declare this sweeping verdict like, I am just being lazy.
Yeah.
We internalize it as this permanent stain on our character,
Yeah.
fundamental lack of drive.
Well, and the societal conditioning around that is profound. We are taught from a very young age that if you aren't producing, if you aren't constantly moving, you simply lack grit.
Yeah, the whole hustle culture thing.
Exactly. It functions as this incredibly toxic label that we just slap onto ourselves. And the irony, of course, is that feeling ashamed of a perceived moral failing biologically increases your stress.
Which I'm guessing makes things worse.
So much worse. It paradoxically makes us even less likely to actually initiate the task we're avoiding in the first place.
Wow. Okay, well, that paradox is exactly what we are dismantling today in this deep dive. We are exploring this really fascinating audio guide called Breaking Free from Laziness.
It's a great source. Really flips the script.
It totally does. And the mission for our analysis today is to just completely abandon those exhausting bootstrap willpower slogans we've all heard like a million times.
Goodbye to all that.
Yes. We are going to decode the hidden underlying mechanics of your own inaction. Because according to the source material, laziness is not a character flaw. It is a highly solvable systems problem.
And framing it mechanically shifts the entire paradigm. I mean, moving the concept of inaction out of the realm of morality and into the realm of systems engineering, it means you can actually troubleshoot it.
Right.
You look at the components, you find where the friction is occurring, and you adjust the machinery.
So for you listening right now, I want you to mentally pull up that one specific task. You know the one.
Everyone has one.
Oh, definitely. The project or chore you've been putting off all week, the one that makes your stomach drop just a little bit when you think about it. Keep that specific task in mind as we go.
Hold on to it.
Yeah, because by the end of our conversation, the goal is for you to have a mechanical blueprint to get it moving without needing some miraculous, lightning bolt burst of motivation to strike you.
And to build that blueprint, the source dictates we have to start by completely redefining what is actually happening in our neural pathways when we avoid something.
Right, because if it's not a moral flaw, what is it?
Well, what we casually label as laziness is, neurologically speaking, a loop. It's this self-reinforcing loop of avoidance, a feeling of overwhelm, and a lack of clear operational next steps.
I want to look closely at the specific root causes the guide identifies for this avoidance loop, because they are incredibly clinical.
They really are. Very specific.
Yeah, they include task ambiguity, fear of failure or judgment, low perceived reward, genuine physical fatigue, and decision fatigue.
Which is a heavy list.
It is. And looking at that list, applying the label of lazy to any of them feels just entirely misguided. It's like a mechanic looking at a stalled car on the side of the highway, refusing to even open the hood, and simply declaring to the owner, well, your car is just unmotivated.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. Instead of, actually hooking up the diagnostics to see if the spark plugs are misfiring or if the gas tank is just empty.
Naming the real specific cause of the systemic failure is the crucial first step. I mean, if a mechanic doesn't diagnose the empty gas tank, no amount of cheering for the car is going to make it drive.
Exactly.
If you don't diagnose your specific type of avoidance, you can't re-engineer your workflow. The intervention depends entirely on accurate diagnosis.
So let's break some of those down.
Sure, let's examine task ambiguity, for instance. The human brain's threat response center, the amygdala, it often interprets vague instructions as a potential hazard.
Wait, really? A hazard?
Yeah. If your task is simply do taxes, the brain essentially panics because it cannot visualize the sequence of actions required to survive that task. It's way too broad.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
So the mechanical fix there is shrinking the task down into something incredibly literal and non-threatening, like, locate last year's W-2 file on the desktop.
Okay, I'm looking at another trigger on this list here, fear. If I'm avoiding writing a project proposal because I am just terrified my boss is going to tear it apart, gritting my teeth doesn't fix the fear.
No, it just elevates your cortisol.
Right, it makes me more stressed. So the solution isn't toughing it out, it's actively lowering the stakes of the outcome.
Precisely. The danger of mislabeling that fear as laziness is that you apply the wrong tool. You try brute force when you actually need psychological safety.
So how do we fix that mechanically?
Well, if you correctly diagnose the bottleneck as fear of judgment, the fix is to deliberately lower the stakes, to basically bypass the brain's threat response. You tell yourself, I'm going to write a deliberately terrible first draft that is for my eyes only.
Oh, I like that. You alter the system's parameters,
Exactly. And the same logic applies to a low-reward task.
like doing the dishes.
Yes, doing the dishes has a notoriously low perceived dopamine payout. The fix isn't character building. The fix is unofficially injecting a dopamine reward into the system.
Like listening to a podcast while you do it.
Exactly, restricting yourself to only listening to your favorite new album or show while your hands are actually in the soapy water.
Okay, so we've been talking about these psychological blockers, fear, ambiguity, low reward. But what happens when the brain is perfectly willing, but the body physically cannot execute?
That completely changes the diagnosis.
Right, because the source points to genuine physiological fatigue as this massive driver of what we call laziness.
We cannot fix a systems problem if the centric processor has zero power. The guide is totally unequivocal on this point. Genuine metabolic fatigue requires rest, not another productivity hack.
And that seamlessly shifts our discussion from psychological barriers to the stark physiological reality of how human motivation is actually generated.
Yeah, the physical engine.
Right. The source refers to this physical engine, and it outlines this energy equation that really flips the script on how we view willpower.
It's fascinating.
Because we tend to think of motivation as this constant, intrinsic resource, almost like a personality trait. But this material argues that motivation is a highly volatile state that fluctuates based on specific biological inputs.
It isolates four primary levers that move energy, right?
Yep. Sleep consistency, morning light and movement, protein-forward meals, and taking strict task-switching breaks.
The biological nature of willpower is honestly one of the most critical takeaways here. Willpower is an incredibly expensive metabolic process located in the prefrontal cortex.
So it literally drains energy.
Oh, massively. Chronic low energy is a physiological signal. It's an alarm bell, not a character trait. If you find yourself in a state of global avoidance—
Meaning, like, not just avoiding one hard task, but avoiding absolutely everything.
yes, exactly. If you're there, the guide insists you must audit those four biological levers before you even attempt to look at productivity systems.
Okay, I have to push back on this just a little bit, because it challenges a very deeply ingrained belief.
Lay it on me.
Is the author genuinely suggesting that my deep existential failure to finally start writing my novel might actually just be a lack of dietary protein and insufficient morning sunlight? It feels almost offensively simple. Like, does biology really override conscious willpower that easily?
The skepticism is completely valid because, well, our culture reveres the concept of the indomitable human will.
Right, mind over matter.
Exactly. But the science suggests biology does override willpower, and it does it often easily and predictably.
Wow.
Consider willpower not as a mystical force, but as a smartphone battery.
Yeah.
When you wake up, assuming you slept well, it might be at 100%. But every single decision you make, every stressor you encounter drains that battery.
So if my biological levers are misaligned.
Yeah, like if your blood sugar is constantly spiking and crashing because you skipped protein, or if your circadian rhythm is confused because you haven't seen natural light, your battery drains at twice the normal rate.
Okay, that paints a very clear picture.
Right. Chasing the feeling of motivation directly is a losing strategy. Managing the biological inputs that literally manufacture the neurochemicals responsible for motivation, that is infinitely more effective than trying to summon the feeling out of thin air.
Okay, so we have to fuel the machine at the baseline. We ensure the four levers sleep, light, protein, and recovery breaks are actually providing the necessary glucose and neurochemical balance.
Step one, absolutely.
But even with a fully charged battery and a fueled engine, the car is still in park. We have to discuss the psychology of starting. How do we actually initiate action without immediately burning up that unreliable limited willpower battery we just carefully charged?
The initiation phase requires us to essentially trick the brain's energy conservation mechanisms.
Trick them how?
Well, the human brain strongly resists starting large, complex tasks because, going back to task ambiguity, it cannot calculate the energetic cost of the entire project.
It just sees a giant mountain.
Exactly. The perceived cost of simply starting feels insurmountable. Therefore, the strategy is shrinking the initial action until the perceived energetic cost of starting approaches absolute zero.
And the guide refers to this as the 2-minute starter rule. Now, we all know the standard 2-minute rule, or at least, the productivity sphere talks about it constantly.
Sure, David Allen popularized a version of it years ago.
Right. But the source material reframes it here. It's not just a cute trick to get chores done. It's about hacking the amygdala's threat response.
Yes.
Instead of telling yourself, I need to write this massive quarterly report, which triggers an avoidance response, you only commit to opening the document and typing one single sentence.
You lower the barrier to entry so far that your brain doesn't even bother mounting a resistance.
That framing is essential, and it directly addresses this psychological weight the author calls the backlog of dread.
Oh, the backlog of dread is so real.
Have you ever noticed the cumulative effect of tiny, uncompleted tasks? Replying to a simple message, filing one single document, or, I don't know, putting a stray item back in a drawer.
Individually, they take no time, but collectively, they become absolutely paralyzing.
Yes, the backlog of dread acts exactly like technical debt in software coding. Every tiny unfiled email, every deferred decision is a line of messy code.
Right, and for a while, the system runs fine.
Exactly. But eventually, the sheer volume of those deferred microtasks bogs down the processing power until the whole operating system just freezes up to protect itself.
That technical debt analogy is spot on. The backlog creates a literal neurological wall of what manifests as severe laziness.
So how do we clear the debt?
The rule the guide proposes to combat this is absolute. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, you must execute it immediately rather than deferring it to a list.
Don't even write it down.
Nope. Adding a 30-second task to a to-do list doesn't organize it. It just adds another line of bad code to your mental technical debt.
This really highlights why overcoming the resting inertia is the hardest part of any system. It's literally physics. It's like rolling a heavy boulder.
Yeah, getting it to budge.
The absolute maximum amount of energy is required to get a heavy boulder to budge that very first millimeter. Once it's rolling down the hill, momentum does the work.
And to break that resting inertia, the guide emphasizes writing down the very next physical action, not the name of the project.
So not planned vacation.
Exactly. We are talking about the literal next physical movement that a total stranger could perform without needing any context, like click the blue reply button or put left arm into left sleeve of gym shirt.
It's so granular.
It has to be. Bypassing the abstract thought process and focusing strictly on kinesthetic movement prevents the prefrontal cortex from overanalyzing the workload.
I love that.
Furthermore, the guide notes a crucial momentum builder. Once that tiny 2-minute physical task is done, you should vocalize the next one out loud.
Wait, talk to yourself.
Yeah. You say, I have opened the document. Now I will type the date at the top. Vocalizing it prevents the brain from finding a gap to hit the brakes and retreat back to a resting state.
Okay, so we've shrunk the task to break the resting inertia, and we've optimized the physical engine. But what happens when the physical space around you is actively hostile to your progress?
That's a huge barrier.
Willpower, as we've established, is biologically expensive, but environment design is incredibly cheap. This brings us to engineering success.
The foundational principle of environment design is manipulating friction. You deliberately reconstruct your physical space so that your desired actions become the path of least resistance, and your undesired avoidance actions require multiple, annoying extra steps.
We are essentially hacking our own innate drive for efficiency. If the goal is going for a run at 6 a.m., you place your running shoes directly in the doorway, so you physically have to trip over them to go to the kitchen. You are making the positive habit mechanically easier than the negative habit. And if the goal is to stop scrolling during deep work, you don't just promise yourself you won't look at your phone.
Because that burns willpower.
Right. You put the phone in a different room on a high shelf. You intentionally introduce minor logistical frictions to the bad habits.
People consistently underestimate how powerfully these tiny logistical frictions dictate our daily behavior. Redesigning a workspace or a morning routine might take, 10 minutes of effort up front?
But pays recurring dividends every single day.
Exactly. You completely offload the burden of choice from your prefrontal cortex. The environment itself executes the heavy lifting for you.
So we've optimized for fear, fatigue, and friction. But looking closely at the source material, there's a totally different trigger here, understimulation.
Oh, boredom. Yes.
Sometimes you avoid a task simply because it is fundamentally mind-numbing. Boredom isn't just a minor annoyance. The guide treats it as an active, potent avoidance trigger.
Because the human brain is a novelty-seeking machine. It will actively rebel against understimulation. The mechanical solution for inherently boring tasks is pairing.
Okay, bundling things together.
Right. You intentionally bundle the low stimulation task with a high stimulation input. You only allow yourself to listen to an incredibly engaging deep dive audio program while doing tedious data entry or folding laundry.
You are tricking the brain by artificially masking the boring task with a highly rewarding stimulus.
It's remarkably effective.
Now, the source also tackles open-ended boring tasks, like the infamous goal to clear the inbox by recommending time boxing. We are all familiar with the concept of setting a timer for 25 minutes of focused work.
The Pomodoro technique,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, but I want to examine the actual mechanism here. If I hate answering emails, what is to stop me from simply sitting there staring angrily at my screen for the entire 25 minutes?
That's a fair question.
How does a ticking clock actually force the brain into action?
It all comes back to how our neurology perceives threats. An open-ended, tedious task, like clear the entire inbox, registers as an infinite threat.
Infinite because there's no defined endpoint.
Precisely. The brain cannot calculate when the energetic drain will end, so it mounts a massive resistance to starting at all. A countdown timer provides a guaranteed, non-negotiable endpoint.
Ah,
It shifts the brain's focus from a fixed, overwhelming output, which triggers avoidance, to a fixed, manageable duration.
so when the amygdala recognizes, hey, this discomfort is finite and will absolutely terminate in exactly 25 minutes.
The resistance plummets.
Yeah.
You might stare at the screen for the first 3 minutes, but the psychological safety of the guaranteed stop time eventually allows the brain to lower its defenses and begin.
It's essentially providing the brain with a definitive escape hatch. That makes perfect sense.
It really works.
So let's review the architecture we've built. We've learned to accurately diagnose the root cause. We've fueled the biological engine. We've used the 2-minute rule to shatter resting inertia. And we've designed a frictionless physical environment.
We have a highly functional system.
But the final challenge is maintenance. How do we prevent this from becoming just another enthusiastic, week-long productivity experiment that, inevitably collapses by day 10?
Sustaining the architecture over the long term relies on 3 structural pillars: strategic accountability, structured rest, and a carefully phased implementation.
Let's start with accountability. Humans are deeply social creatures. We are statistically far more likely to maintain consistency when a social contract is involved.
We are, but the guide makes a very interesting distinction here.
Yeah, it advises against broadcasting your goals to a massive audience or posting them all over social media. Why is a smaller audience better?
Because broad public declarations often provide a premature dopamine hit.
Oh, like you get the reward before doing the work.
Exactly. You get the social reward of being praised for your ambition before you've actually done the thing, which decreases the drive to complete the task.
So what's the alternative?
You only need one specific person. One person whose only job is to ask, did you execute the action? This singular focus converts a fragile internal promise into a binding external social contract without the distracting dopamine spike of public attention.
That makes total sense. And that leads directly into a phenomenon the guide calls the burnout rebound, which honestly destroys so many well-intentioned systems.
It is the ultimate system killer.
We experience a burst of high functionality, we execute flawlessly for a week, we feel invincible, and then we completely ignore our biological limits until we crash headfirst into a state of severe, paralyzing laziness.
And the burnout rebound is completely predictable and incredibly common. When you push the system too hard and completely drain the biological battery, the body's autonomic nervous system seizes control and forces a shutdown to preserve basic functioning.
It forces you to stop.
Yes. And this involuntary shutdown looks exactly like laziness to the outside observer. But it is, in reality, a critical biological self-defense mechanism.
Wow. So, if I'm interpreting the guide correctly, it suggests that our cultural habit of treating rest as a reward to be earned after hard work is actually a systemic vulnerability.
It is arguably the most dangerous vulnerability in any productivity system. Rest cannot be treated as a conditional reward. Rest is a fundamental load-bearing component of the system itself.
So it has to be built in.
If you withhold rest until you feel you have adequately earned it, you are mathematically guaranteeing a systemic crash. The mechanical fix is scheduling non-negotiable periods of rest time with zero obligations early in the planning phase.
Which means if you identify a recurring pattern of intense, heroic effort followed by weeks of total inertia, The solution is never to demand more discipline from yourself.
Never. The solution is unapologetic, mathematically scheduled rest.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this guide, which is the 30-day reset plan. And if I look at the sequence in this reset, it's deliberately staggered.
Very staggered.
It doesn't ask you to overhaul your entire life on day one. It starts by isolating variables.
The phased approach is critical because introducing too many new behaviors at once creates massive systemic friction. Days 1 through 7 are solely dedicated to tiny starts.
Just the 2-minute rule.
Pick one single task a day and execute the 2-minute version. That is all. You are simply training the neural pathways to overcome resting inertia without triggering the threat response.
Then, in days 8 through 14, the variable shifts to environment design. You spend perhaps 15 minutes a day exclusively focused on adding logistical friction to your bad habits and removing it from your good ones.
Moving the phone, setting up the workspace, yeah.
Why delay accountability until the 3rd week, though?
Because if you introduce the pressure of social accountability before your physical environment is optimized to support the behavior, the inherent friction of your unoptimized space will cause you to fail.
Which breaks the social contract.
Exactly, breaking the social contract and severely damaging your momentum. So days 15 through 21 are for introducing that one accountability partner only after the environment is heavily assisting you.
And finally, days 22 through 30 bring the entire architecture online. You run the tiny starts, the frictionless environment, the social check-ins, and most importantly, you permanently integrate the scheduled, guilt-free rest days to insulate the system against the burnout rebound.
It is a deliberate, gentle scaling of capacity. Small, mechanically sound adjustments repeated consistently are what ultimately build unbreakable momentum.
It completely replaces the need for exhausting, unsustainable bursts of sheer willpower.
It really does.
So synthesizing all of this for you listening today, defeating what we call laziness, is rarely, if ever, a matter of waking up one morning and suddenly transforming into a highly disciplined, stoic machine.
Doesn't happen.
No. It is a strategic process of lowering the energetic cost of starting until the act beginning becomes virtually automatic.
Right.
The old adage holds true, but with a mechanical twist. A journey of 1,000 miles truly does begin with a single, highly engineered, 2-minute step.
As we conclude, I'd like to offer one final paradigm shift to reflect on, drawing from the deep evolutionary biology woven through this source material.
Oh, please do.
We have analyzed in depth how our brains naturally resist vague objectives and constantly seek the path of least metabolic resistance.
Right.
Well, if our brains and bodies are biologically hardwired by millions of years of evolution to seek efficiency and aggressively avoid unnecessary energy expenditure, which is the exact behavior we currently stigmatize as laziness, perhaps our modern societal obsession with constant, grinding, unending productivity is the actual biological anomaly.
Wow. That completely flips the entire conversation.
It does, right. By reframing laziness not as a personal failure, but as our body's highly evolved natural efficiency software functioning exactly as designed to keep us alive, we can stop fighting our own nature.
We can declare a truce.
Yes, declare a truce in the war against ourselves, and instead finally learn how to code intelligently within our own biological operating system.
I think that is just the absolute perfect place to leave it. So the very next time you find yourself stalled out, staring at the ceiling, dreading that one specific task you thought of at the beginning of our deep dive, well, don't kick the tires and call yourself a failure.
Pop the hood.
Exactly. Pop the hood. Check the biological battery. Clear the technical debt. Give the engine a tiny 2-minute spark and just watch how fast you can actually get moving.